Well, good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? Thanks very much for coming out this evening, and welcome to the public information session on the Shannon Mews Rezoning Application. And my name is John Forsdick, and I've been asked by the city to be the facilitator for this evening's event. And I've had a chance to talk to a number of you. You've wished me good luck. I appreciate that. Hopefully tonight we're going to have a good constructive information session on the rezoning process. And so we're going to get into that in a moment. Before I get into talking about the agenda and introducing that, I do want to introduce just a few folks in the room. Councillor Raymond Louie is here this evening. Mr. Bruno Wall is here. He represents the Wall Corporation, and he has his team of planners in attendance as well, and you may have talked to some of them during the open house portion. And of course, you will meet some of the city staff that are involved in the process as we go through the presentation today. Just to take a quick look at the agenda, you should have a copy of 3 documents when you came in. One is this is a different document, but there's a feedback form that you have. That's the yellow form that was on your chair. And this is a comment form that we want back from you at the end of the evening, if you could provide that to us. There's also a bookmark that tells you where you can get more information. If you don't have one of these yellow comment forms, the first one, I'll come to that in a second. There's also a comment card, a little white card that if you don't feel comfortable asking questions during the question and discussion session, you can write your question on that comment form and hand it to one of the staff. So that's the little white cue card. If you prefer to speak into the microphone, then we'll deal with that as we go through the question and discussion session. This white piece of paper is from the Shannon Mews Neighborhood Association, and John Brimacombe gave this to me and mentioned that there's copies of this piece of paper which gives you some additional information on one of the back tables. So feel free to grab that material before you leave this evening. Now, the role of the facilitator is to make sure that everyone has a fair and equal opportunity to participate in the discussion. And we need to do that in a controlled and a safe environment so everybody feels comfortable participating. So we don't get into a lot of discussion from any one individual, but we try to get views and ideas from lots of folks around the room. And I'm going to need your help to do that tonight. Because we have such a huge crowd of folks, it's going to be a real challenge to make sure that we move around the room during the question and discussion period and capture all of your comments and ideas. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about how you can help me do that when I get to the end of my presentation and just before we move into the discussion on the rezoning process. In terms of our agenda, we've got about a 20-minute presentation. And the focus of this presentation is to make sure that you're well informed about the rezoning process. So Brent HotterN, who is the Director of Planning for the city, is going to walk you through, he's going to spend only about 10 minutes walking you through the rezoning process and making sure that you understand the respective roles of the community, the applicant, and the city. And after that, what we're going to do is then move into a discussion from Alison Higginson, who's the rezoning planner. And Alison is going to talk about a little bit of the site history, its location, and then she's, and then the added background noise. And then she's going to move into the opportunities for providing public input. And when we talk about the public input opportunities, what we're trying to emphasize tonight is that we need to make sure that everybody is on a common level of understanding about the process as it moves forward. I do want to acknowledge that many of you have a pretty good understanding of what's in this rezoning application. You've been involved in previous consultations that the applicant ran back in 2009, and you may be very familiar. Others are not familiar, and we're entering into a new process, and so I have to ask for your patience as we make sure that everybody has that common level of information and understanding of the rezoning process and the opportunities for public consultation. Now, City Council has directed that this application go through a full public consultation process, and so there's a lot of work to do, and we're just starting. This is just the start of the process. And I know many of you have frustrations, you've got some concerns, you've got ideas, and we want to hear those things tonight. But first of all, we need to work through the 20 minutes of presentation, and then we'll move into the question and discussion. Is that okay with everyone? I see nods. Okay, good. Okay, so I said earlier that my job is to make sure that there's a fair and equal opportunity for you folks to provide comments. So everyone needs to participate in the process. And in order to do that, we've got just a few discussion guidelines which I need you to endorse, agree with, and support. The first one is try to keep your comments and your questions till after we get through the presentation. And that ensures, as I said before, that we're all in the same common frame. Secondly, keep your comments brief. Okay, so if you have a question, if you can sum that question up in 1 minute, and you should be able to sum it up in 1 minute, and if you can't, what I'll do is probably give you a bit of a signal to say, okay, try to get your question out, and we need to be fair to everybody. And so if you can get your question out in 1 minute, then that means that we can move around the room and get questions from other folks at the same time. Try to contribute new information. So if you've already heard the comment, you can rest assured that we've heard it as well. And we are taking notes and keeping track of all of the comments that are brought forward this evening. So if somebody has already mentioned something, you can endorse and support it if you like, but try to add a new comment or a new idea. And the other point that I would like to make is that every problem, or most problems, have solutions. And so any ideas or suggestions that you have to move the discussion forward, any things that you think either the city or the applicant should be considering, whether that be around the process or around the application itself, then make those suggestions. And those will be taken back and then moved into the process. And finally, and this is really important with a large group of people, I want you to respect the views of your neighbors. No one likes to be yelled at. No one likes to be booed or be ridiculed within a public forum. Okay? We don't want any bullying in the meeting itself. So we want to have a good, open and constructive dialogue and a sharing of information and ideas. So please respect the views of everyone, and we can move forward with a pretty good discussion this evening. So any concerns about the discussion guidelines? Because if you take too long, I will ask you to summarize. If anybody gets a little over aggressive, I will ask you to refrain. Are you fine with that? Okay, then that's the way I'm going to run the meeting. So the first presentation is by Brent HotterN, and he's going to walk you through the rezoning process. And I promise that we won't take more than 20 minutes or so between the two presentations, and then we'll get into any comments or questions that you may have. The last point I would make is that, and Allison will touch on this, is that there's a lot more work to do. Okay, this is just the start, and it's an introduction to the process. There's a lot more work to do, and that will unfold over the next few months, and Allison will tell you about that. So Brent, over to you.
Thank you, John. That was a great introduction. Can everyone hear me? And I'm not sure if that's my natural voice or the microphone. It is working. That's great. I've just asked Allison literally to yell out to me at 5 minutes to keep me on a short leash, because those of you who've heard me before know I can go on. And I honestly don't want to do that tonight because we've got a lot to cover. And John, that was a great start. Where's my movement? I guess I do it here, right? In terms of advancing the slides. High
technology, just forward, backward.
Thank you. I did want to mention, because I can't remember if John did, that we are recording the event as well. And that's not to make anyone nervous. It's so that we can actually show the results of this, post them online. So for folks who weren't able to come today, tonight, they can get all the same information by going on the web. Sorry, John, if you actually did mention that. Okay, I wanted to start off by saying certainly thank you all for coming. We know how busy everyone is, and we know how indicative this is of your passion and your interest in your community and the Shannon Mews proposal in particular. And we know this isn't easy for all of you with families and other obligations, so we truly do appreciate it. And this is a great crowd. And I'm glad to see, I think the room is working relatively well. I hope everyone can see the slides as well as you can. The main message I want to start off with is this is the first event of a series of events and processes that we're going to have in what we call actually an enhanced engagement process. And John mentioned that council said that, directed us to do a thorough process. I'd like to hope we do a reasonably thorough process all the time. As a matter of fact, council said more than just doing a thorough process. They said do more. More than we usually do in a rezoning process, particularly because of the scale and complexity of this proposal, because of the nature and particularly some of the language demographics of the community. Do more. Put your thinking caps on and come up with an approach that is starts off on the right foot with the right kind of education about our processes and such, and follow it up with a series of processes that go beyond our usual open house formats. And if some of you in the audience have participated in our usual open house formats, we've certainly heard, particularly recently, that process can be dissatisfying. So frankly, we're trying our best to do more, and that's something that Council specifically said to us in this context. This is the start of our process. This is the first event in our process. We're not at the middle, we're not at the end, we're just at the beginning. We have come to no conclusions yet. We are not making any recommendations to Council. We are in listening mode, and we are in learning mode, and we're sort of doing a shared learning with you as we go through this process. Now that might be a little confusing because many of you have already been participating in events. And that's because we actually do encourage developers, applicants, to do their own processes, engage with the community before they make a formal application. And this developer actually has done a fair amount of that pre-application engagement. And that's a good thing, by the way. We encourage that, and we certainly appreciate that the developer has done that in this case. But it might be confusing because up till now, the process has been their process. Tonight is the start of the city's official process. And I hope that there's been a little bit of confusion, I've noticed in the past, about who's running the events, who's documenting the events, etc. Up till now, it's been the applicant. From now on, it's the city. There have been those already opportunities, certainly for you to learn and to engage, and we're going to be going beyond that as we now move forward. So about the process, as I said, Council has asked us to do an enhanced public engagement process. Tonight's event focuses primarily on making sure you really understand well the process that you're going to be engaged in, the opportunities you're going to have in that process, so you feel as comfortable as you can be in engaging in it. And if we don't do a thorough enough job tonight, let us know, and we'll keep working on that. It's important, I think, right from the start to establish a good understanding of the various roles and responsibilities within the system, because certainly we at City Hall hear indication of a lot of confusion about the relationship between the community and the various sectors of the community, whether it's the local residential community, the citywide community, the business communities, various stakeholder groups within the communities, and City Hall, but also the relationship in particular between City Hall and the developer. And that can sometimes manifest itself in confusion about, as I say, who's running the meeting. So it's very important, I think, to make the distinction about the roles and responsibilities. All right, so I'm already behind. Thanks, Allison. So the three sort of component groups in the process are the community, the applicant, and the city. And of course, that's a bit of an oversimplification. There's many, many different subgroups. But for purposes of discussion, let's start there. So the community's role. In our sense, in our feeling, your role, your obligation, your commitment in this process is to come out and participate, to educate yourself as much as possible, make sure you're operating on the basis of factual information as much as you can. And I know that's a challenge. There's a huge learning curve here, and we don't always do the best job explaining complex situations to members of the public. But that's what we certainly expect and hope that you'll try to do, and that you're going to articulate those interests and opinions and such about the site and the application in a way that educates us, that informs us, certainly us in the case of the city, and also the applicant. So, and that means you have a right to expect that you're going to be heard, that you're going to be listened to, that your opinions and concerns are understood. That does not necessarily mean at the end of the day that everything you say, every individual statement, every individual makes will be agreed with. But you do have the expectation to make sure that your feelings are understood and heard. And often we hear, you didn't listen, but often there can be a difference between listening and understanding and agreeing at the end of the day. And I presume most of you will agree with that, or hope you will. The applicant's role. The applicant's role is to listen to and understand and make sure they've heard and understand all of the comments they've received from the public, stakeholders, advisory groups, and yes, us on city staff. And that's a serious obligation. They're not supposed to be flippant. They're not supposed to be dismissive of anything they hear. There is a commitment to make sure that it's been understood and considered carefully. Again, they don't necessarily have to agree with everything they hear, but they have a commitment to make sure they've heard and understood. City staff, we have a role an expectation that we will lead a fair and transparent process to ensure that all interests, including citizens' interests, stakeholder interests, every interest you can possibly imagine, all the inputs into our system, if you will, have been heard and carefully considered. And that's not just the residents who come out to meetings like this. As you can imagine, our job is to listen to communities and inputs every day of every week across the year. And our job is to consider all of those in a broad context. But we start by making sure that we've truly understood what you've said. And at the end of the day, with the kind of passion and principle that we try to bring to building the future of the city, our job is to make a professional recommendation to council on the application. We're not the decision makers. I think most people probably understand that here. That's city council that makes the decision. But our job is to come up with a professional recommendation and also, of course, to negotiate the quality of the project as it goes on. But at the end of the day, our job is to recommend to council what we think they should do. Their job is to make a decision on the rezoning application, having considered everything they've heard, all the inputs in the process, the policy that they or other councils have already crafted, and thoughts and perspectives about future needs even, future residents' needs. Everything they might consider in the context of an application, and ultimately they make a decision. The city's role in action, we're hopefully giving you some indication of the approach that we're trying to take in how we're starting this exercise. Certainly, we encourage you to keep apprised of our process on the city website. We're going to be making sure that we have as much information as we can there, and we've already done a fair amount in that area. And if you haven't visited the city website, please do that. There's help to help you find your way to the sites and the information you've been provided. We've been meeting with citizens since late 2010, and certainly even in 2009 or late 2010, and even as early as 2009, we've been in the same processes that you have with the applicant, listening to what has been said in previous events. We've done a lot of thinking around enhanced multilingual processes, and we'd like your feedback constantly through this process on how well we do in that area. Of course, we have the site sign. That's a basic requirement, so I don't want to spend any time on that. But one of the things we're doing that's new and innovative is an online discussion forum called Talk Shannon Mews, and we're very much interested in using that as a bit of a pilot to see if it's something we might use across the city in the future. So I want to give you a brief sense of what we've heard so far, because we have been listening through the developers process, and we get emails every day on this particular proposal. And there are already some common themes we're hearing as we listen. One, we are hearing some concerns around heightened density, particularly some of the tower proposals, but also just the general increase in density that's being proposed on the site. Concerns around increased traffic, both access to the site in terms of how the access is being proposed and general traffic volumes. Neighborhood character, and many of you have said to us that particularly because you feel the single-family nature of the community really reflects its character, that's something you're quite concerned about losing. The lack of local services, and especially as new population comes in, whether there will be more demand on those services and amenities and such that are already in the community and perhaps a bit strained. The loss of mature vegetation on the site is something we've heard. And for those of you who live on the site, we've heard issues about impact and phasing opportunities for the affected tenants. So with that, I hope I didn't go too far over 10 minutes. I'm going to hand it over to Allison and look forward to helping answer all of your questions once we're finished. Thank you.
So when Allison, am I mic'd up? When Allison finishes, I'll just go through a few protocols in terms of how we're going to take questions. So if you give me a couple of seconds after she finishes, then we'll move into the question period. Allison?
Okay. Can everyone hear me? This is my first time with a lapel mic, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, I know I recognize some of the tenants from the site, so some of you in the room are intimately familiar with the site, but others may not be. So I'll just do a really brief overview. Okay, so the site area is 10 acres. The site is bounded by Granville Street to the east, Adira to the west, West 57th Avenue to the south, and a lane and residential properties to the north. There are currently 162 rental units on site, including 15 apartments in the 3 heritage buildings. The B.T. Rogers Mansion and the perimeter wall are both designated heritage structures. The coach house and gatehouse are both listed on the Vancouver Heritage Register, but they're not designated. The site was originally developed as a dairy farm. The B.T. Rogers Mansion was developed over 10 years, beginning in 1915. In the 1970s, the site was rezoned to permit development of the townhouses and apartments that we see today. And in 2010, the property owner submitted a rezoning application to allow denser forms of multifamily housing, which is why we're here tonight. I appreciate these charts might be a little difficult, especially on this screen. We do have boards at each side of the room with this information on, so certainly if you need more clarification, staff will be able to go over that with you later. The process for reviewing a rezoning application looks like this. There are panels at the back, as I say, which contain the same information. The initial inquiry regarding the site was received in 2009. As part of staff's preliminary review, the inquiry was reported to City Council, as Brent mentioned, for direction, and that happened in September 2009. The rezoning application was subsequently submitted in August 2010, and we're now in the large box in the center of the chart, where staff, the public, and advisory bodies are all reviewing the application. You can see that we're still fairly early in the process, and all the analysis and comments received at this stage are carried forward and reflected in staff's recommendations to Council. The public hearing is where Council will make a decision on the application, and this is where they will also hear directly from the public before they make that decision. In addition to the rezoning application, the applicant has submitted 4 development alternatives for the site. This was one of Council's directions to the applicant in 2009. The rezoning application itself proposes 891 dwelling units in 6 new buildings. Sorry, John, can you remind me how to use the pointer?
The middle one.
Oh, okay, so right at the top there. So let me just back up. So the rezoning application proposes 891 dwelling units in 6 new buildings ranging from 4 stories to 14 stories in height. It proposes a density of 2.08 floor space ratio. The development alternatives, and there are 4 of them, range from 428 units to 898 units, and from a density of 1.37 to a density of 2.10 floor space ratio. They also illustrate a number of different housing types, including 2.5-story townhouses, 4-story apartments, and some towers. The scope of heritage retention and the amount of public open space provided varies between the schemes. All the alternative schemes are shown at the back of the room on the boards which Bruno Wall and his team have brought, and they happen to be standing in front of them. So they're certainly there for more information after the meeting. To guide staff in their evaluation of the application and the alternatives, City Council approved 11 guiding principles in the September 2009 report. All of the principles are also illustrated on the city's boards, and they include such things as considering replacing and increasing the market rental housing on the site, addressing the visual impact of development on the surrounding residences, investigating the additional density, respecting the historic value of the site, and looking for opportunities for public open space and public access on the site. Prior to any rezoning application being submitted, staff usually encourage applicants to carry out their own consultation with the public. In this case, the applicant and their team began their outreach process in the fall of 2009 with a community survey, meetings with local groups such as the Marple Business Improvement Association, the ARC's Vision Implementation Committee, Heritage Vancouver, and others. The process involved a community design workshop in December 2009 and ongoing meetings with tenants on the site. Summaries of their consultation have been compiled by the applicant and provided to city staff. They will all be reflected in the staff report to Council as one aspect of the public consultation process for this project. In going forward, city staff have designed an engagement process that we hope will enable citizens to gain an understanding of the application and the development alternatives and to share their views with staff, the applicant, and with each other. The process is designed so that public input gained along the way is captured in print, video, and on our website and carried through subsequent events. We want this process to be fair, inclusive, and transparent. Phase 1, where we are now, is focused on reviewing the application and the 4 alternatives based on Council's evaluation criteria. This will be done through upcoming in-depth design workshops with small groups, The input from these workshops will be shared with the broader community at a very big open house, if it's based on the crowd we have tonight, here at Ryerson Church on February 10th. If you're interested in participating in the workshop, please talk to one of our city staff, and we all have our name tags on. Before you leave tonight, we have some sign-up sheets at the back. After phase 1, the applicant will consider how to respond to all the input they have received, including staff comments and advice from advisory bodies such as the Vancouver Heritage Commission and the Urban Design Panel, and they will make revisions to their proposal. Phase 2 of the city's consultation will begin once a revised submission is received, likely in March. This will be done through more small workshops, or perhaps one big one. We're not quite sure what the demand and the interest is going to be yet, followed by another open house to present the final rezoning proposal to the community and to seek input. And dates for these events have not been scheduled, but certainly they'll all be on our website, and we will likely have subsequent mailings out as well. In addition to the public events taking place in the next few months, the city has developed a new online forum called Talk Vancouver, just for the Shannon Mews project. And if you'd like to communicate or prefer to communicate via the internet, then we hope this is something that you'll enjoy using. The website will have up-to-date information about the application, upcoming events, videos of past events, such as is being recorded tonight, answers to questions, and links to important documents. And it will be in English and Chinese. There are also 3 discussion forums, all independently moderated, each with a different focus, where you can share your views with city staff and each other. To get the discussion started, we've set up 3 forums on height and density, traffic and parking, and sustainability. And over time, we can change those forum topics so we can make sure we get a range of information and opinions on a variety of aspects of the application. We have laptops over to my left, behind Brent and by the big banner there, for you to take a look at the website tonight. We have assistance from our software provider, Anthea Brown. She also has a name tag, so please stop by and check it out. Then you can sign up and register and carry on from there. Most of the information, as I said, has been translated into Chinese. We're having a small issue tonight with the equipment, so unfortunately the Chinese links are not all working, but you should be able to link them from home. The web address for Talk Vancouver is on the bookmark that was at your place, and there are more bookmarks at the door if you'd like to pick some up and share with your neighbors. This is a first for the city, and we're really excited to see how the forums are used. So please do take a look at the site and feel free to provide us with your feedback, because it is a learning experience for us as well. And with that, I'll turn it back to John.
Okay, just a couple of quick points before we jump into the questions. We've been joined by Councillor Anton and Councillor Chow. Where's Councillor Chow? Welcome. We've gone through a bit of the background already. We're now moving into the questions and discussions. I also forgot to mention that Angela Ko is going to be hosting this same meeting in Mandarin tomorrow night and in Cantonese next Tuesday on the 18th. So there's 2 more meetings around the process. And so what you've heard from both Brent and Allison is about the overall rezoning process and the public consultation, how to get involved. And if you want to dive into the content, then it's really your obligation to tie into those work sessions, those workshops that are coming up. Or alternatively, and you can do both, go to the website and actually interact with some of the questions in the dialogue on the website itself.